Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, from Eric Lima's Shenanigans of 1977, it's time to head back in our mental DeLoreans where we talk about things of pop culture back in the 80s and 90s with nostalgic shenanigans. And our host of this great segment is the youngster in the picture from the first grade in the 80s, Mr. Eric M. Lima. Thank you very much, Mr. Announcer, sir. Well, hello there, everyone. All you wonderful, beautiful people out there. Welcome to yet another episode of Eric Lima Shenanigans 1977. Episode number 2177. Today is the third edition, the third episode of Nostalgic Shenanigans, where I talk about everything from the 80s and 90s, all pop culture stuff that I grew up on, whether it be movies, TV shows, food, all of entertainment, cartoons and whatnot. But I'm also going to talk about celebrities. And today, we're going to talk about one of the most popular celebrities in the game show world. Obviously, a lot of folks know out there that as of April the 15th, 2025, yesterday, Winston Conrad Martindale, better known to everyone as Wink Martindale, passed away of lymphoma at the age of 91. And first and foremost, I want prayers and condolences go out to his family, his relatives, and his many wonderful friends and fans. That's right. And I'm a fan of Wink Martindale. And when I was a kid growing up, back in the 80s, my first game show I ever watched was Tic-Tac-Toe. Because Jack Barry and Dan Wright took a simple kids game show and transformed it into one of the funnest game shows ever to watch. In fact, a gentleman by the name of George Russell responded to my tweet on Twitter X, as I'm going to call it, X Twitter. So, and let's I'm going to go to I'm going to go to my post, and here's what he said about Tic-Tac-Toe. His game shows were good, clean fun to watch. Not like Dating Game or the Newlywed Game. It says New Wedding Game, but I knew what he got. That's why, because I knew it was an auto typo. With sexual jokes. I know he did make an appearance with his wife Sandy on Tattletales, hosted by Bert Convy in the 70s. Did you know he did host his first game show back in 1965 called What's the Song? And he had another one called Words and Music, or Words with Music, I do believe. And then Gambit, which was premiered on the same day as The Price is Right. And I know Joker's Wild. So yeah, on CBS it was Gambit and Joker's Wild. And who knew that the two gentlemen, Jack Barry and Wink Martindale, would come together to have another show formed in 1978. One of the most popular game shows at that time, in the late 70s and early mid-80s, was Tic-Tac-Toe. Tic-Tac-Toe was, to me, one of my all-time favorite game shows to watch. Even when I was a kid growing up. I was fascinated by the set, way to use computers. Computers were a thing back in the late 70s, as you know. Wonder what they did with that game board now. I wonder if all the TVs on the screen, monitors on that game board still works. Well, let's connect every video game system and play some video games with them, like a Space Invader race or something. I don't know. Or somebody pulls a prank, the dragon comes out. Roar! Hey, I'm trying to play here. Anyways, Wink Martindale was one of my favorite game show hosts when I was a kid growing up. He always has a sense of humor, always tries to make people laugh, tells dry puns, dry jokes, and and he made he made some great jokes. One particular, I like this one. You know what's like being a bachelor? You'd be footloose and fiance free, and I was like, oh, everyone's like, oh, and he'll take, he like corny. He tells so many corny jokes. But one thing, one thing about him, I think he was nicknamed the King of Corn on one of the videos because he always tells some funny, corny jokes. And I will never forget when Tom McKee, Navy Lieutenant Tom McKee, who was the most iconic contestant from that game show, was going up against a guy named Jerry James, who was also a higher ranked official in the military because he's a Navy lieutenant. And Wink Martindale looked after he read off the categories. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in the history of tic-tac-toe, you've seen him in the comics for the very first time, Tom and Jerry. And I was like, oh boy! And everybody started laughing and clapping. They all thought it was pretty funny. And I knew what Wink Martindale would get. It was like Tom and Jerry. I was like, oh. One thing that's why I like about Wink Martindale. He had a sense of humor. In fact, he was the quintessential game show host. He was like the perfect blueprint. He was like the blueprint of what a perfect game show host would look like. To the point where they made a toy called Mr. Game Show. The guy, Gus Glitz, was modeled after Wink Martindale. With all the hair the way it was and the teeth. Because Wink Martindale had perfect teeth, for goodness sakes. Anyways, all kidding aside though, but that's serious though. But one thing I did not know, I know he was a singer. Yeah, I think he sang a couple of. He was a disc jockey. Started in '50s. Age 17, he was friends with Elvis Presley, which is, dude, that if you're friends with the king of rock and roll, you're going to make it in the business. Let me tell you, because you get a chance. He had a rare interview with Elvis Presley. They did not let him know because they taped it, but they did not let him know about it because he would be nervous. But Elvis Presley was longtime friends with Wink Martindale. In fact, his wife, Sandy, Wink Martindale's wife, Sandy, once dated Elvis Presley. I mean, I can imagine what went through Wink's mind when Sandy decided to date Wink Martindale and ended up marrying the guy. I wonder what he was thinking. How did I get so lucky to have a girl who once dated the king of rock and roll to go from him to me? It's like a girl wanting to date me and she dated, I would say, Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio, and all of a sudden she ended up seeing me. Oh, I like him. I'd be questioning myself too. I mean, if I was in Wayne's shoes, having a girl that likes me and all of a sudden she dumps Elvis Presley for me. I'm like, if she dumped Elvis Presley for me, I'm like, I'd be like, Wink, man, I really don't know how. Why, But Wink was very blessed to have Sandy in his life, which is great. And one thing I know about Wink Martindale too, this was really cool. And as a born again Christian, I did appreciate this wholeheartedly. And I'm gonna go down here. Whoops, personal life. He had Madeline Leach. He had 4 children, a couple divorced in 1972. Married his second wife, Sandy. Had a few dogs named after the various game shows he hosted. And he was identified as a born-again Christian, was once a guest on the TBN flagship show program, Praise the Lord, endorsed several conservative positions politically. And, in fact, he appeared in Sirius Elvis Radio and shared stories about Elvis Presley. I did not know that Wink Martindale was a born-again Christian. But then again, I believe it because you barely hear the guy cuss. That was a cool thing about him. He never cussed on live television, and the way he hosted game shows was very professional. He was one of the most well-rounded game show hosts that I've watched. He was very professional. He was very articulate about the rules, the questions. He was very eloquent in reading the questions and explaining the situation in the game show to the contestant. And very relaxed. That was the cool thing about Wink Martindale. He was relaxed. He was cool. He was, and and he has a lot of fun with the audience. If he tells a bad joke, the audience goes, ah. And like Wink Martindale, I think one time was stuck his tongue out, just be funny and all. And Yeah, that's what. You notice he had the, he never appeared on the dating game, newlywed game. I cannot imagine Wink Martindale hosting dating game. You would probably hear some of the, bachelors what they're saying, and he'd be like, I don't know how Jim Lang would put up with this. I don't know how he would have ended this up. He probably would tell Sandy, oh my gosh, what do these contestants are saying, He probably was like, in kind of shock. I'd be sitting there, if I was a host dating game, I'm like, I can imagine him hosting the newlywed game. And he'd be like, what? I think one time I think it was, Tom McKee was facing, one of the contestants, forget his name, I think his name was Sam, I think it was, and he was like some kind of male stripper. He was, do I think, did I think that was? Yeah, I'm going to stay away from that subject. And that's what Wink Martindale said. He's pretty funny about that. And, I want to ask you, are you married? A silly question. I'm going to always ask you a silly question. Are you married? And when we give you a silly answer, yeah, no. No, I'm not even engaged. He goes, well, it's a good thing that, good thing about bachelors is they're footloose and fiance free. Oh, no. And everybody's like, one thing about Wink Martindale, he'll get a joke in, like Jack Barry. Jack Barry usually comes in with a dry joke a couple of times, some puns, and it, I can imagine what. I can imagine what Wink, Jack, and Jim Lang are doing. They hosted three of the biggest Barry Enright game shows back in the day, in the 80s. Joker's Wild, Tic-Tac-Toe, and Bullseye. Now they're all gone. A lot of people are now saying that Bob Eubanks is the last of the old school 70s game show hosts. Well, you count Jim Peck as well. They're still left. And, you got one of the biggest game show hosts of the 80s, Peter Tamarkin, passed away. At age, he died in 2006, on a plane crash. Alex Trebek. I mean, a lot of these game show hosting legends now, they're all gone. Except Bob Eubanks is still alive and Jim Peck. And it amazes me that now we have actors and comedians trying their luck at hosting game shows. I'll guarantee you this. Like people like Steve Harvey, Drew Carey, Cameron Matheson is hosting a game show called Beat the Bridge. Brooke Burns hosting the new Tic-Tac-Toe, which ironically, I don't know if coincidentally, I should say, that Wink Martindale, the day after Tic-Tac-Toe made a comeback, this past Monday, next day, yesterday, he died. I was going to say, what's going through, I did not know Wink Martindale was in the hospital for lymphoma, and two, I was going to wonder in the back of my mind, what does Wink Martindale think about the new version of Tic-Tac-Toe, And I'm sure that, I think, on a future episode of this version of Tic-Tac-Toe, hopefully they'll acknowledge the legendary Wink Martindale. And if they have, I'm hoping they do a Tic-Tac-Toe like marathon to pay tribute to Wink Martindale. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. And I'm going to check. I'm sure GSN will probably do like something now next week or something like that. But all I know is, well, if Wink Martindale was is born again Christian, we don't know where he is. And I know he's with the Lord up there. And I'll tell you, Wink Martindale is blessed. What a great family. Was blessed with a great family. With wonderful people he calls friends. Very blessed to be he's very blessed to be friends with Elvis Presley, which I think, Wink Martindale was a blessed man. And he forever will be missed. Wink Martindale, sir, I want to thank you for your contributions for game show for game shows, for entertainment. Hosting making one of my all-time favorite game shows great to watch, and that was Tic-Tac-Toe, and I thank you for that, sir. You made Tic-Tac-Toe very entertaining and fun. Not only just educational, but fun. You know, fun for me when I was watching when I was a kid, and I enjoyed it. Thanks to you and all the staff over there at that were over there at Tic-Tac-Toe that made the show great for us viewers to watch, viewers like myself. And I say thank you, Mr. Martindale. May you rest in peace, sir. Here's the old Shenanigans salute to you, sir. Condolences and prayers to your family, relatives, and friends, and your many, many fans that loved you over the years. You forever will be a legend. Now, as you're home with the Lord, your legacy here on earth will live on through the many game shows that you've hosted over the years. If we end up watching them on YouTube or any other streaming site, shows like Tic-Tac-Toe, and in your honor, sir, I will continue to play Tic-Tac-Toe on my channel here. Try to beat the dragon once again and forever. Tic-Tac-Toe will always be played on Mondays. Will be always known as Martindale Mondays. Even though your version of High Rollers is played on Tuesdays, and I call it Trebek Tuesday, honoring another game show hosting legend in Alex Trebek. I will dedicate those High Roller gameplays to you for this year. Thank you, Mr. Wink Martindale. Thank you so much. May you rest in peace, sir. Many people will talk to me like, I don't know him personally. But I felt like I did when watching him host Tic-Tac-Toe over these years, and me watching the show religiously, so to speak. Been watching Tic-Tac-Toe, and I felt like, he just basically, he basically just made Tic-Tac-Toe fun for me to watch. And I wish I would have talked to him personally. It would be an ultimate honor to talk. I talked to a lot of wrestling celebrities as part of the Rant and Rave podcast, and I had people like Ricky Morton, Victoria, Melina, Sabu. Alex Shelley, Moose. We recently Eugene, Zach Gowen, Gilbert, and Nikita Koloff. I would have loved to talk to Wink Martindale and say, like I said, I would tell him Tic-Tac-Toe was my all-time favorite game show to watch. You made it great. You made it fun. If I met him personally, I would have told him that, and I would say thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Martindale. So that is it. Again, thank you, Wink Martindale. Rest in peace, sir. Good sir. That's all the time that we have on this episode. As you know, tonight we have AEW Dynamite and WWE Evolve, and I'm also going to be filling in for David as I host for, I don't know if I'm hosting it or whatnot, organizing it for Weekly Baseball Roundup, and I'm hoping to get some of the crew in, and we'll talk some baseball. And as you know, this week is not just Holy Week, but also Wrestling Week. Also, we get the final SmackDown before WrestleMania. Saturday we got Stand Deliver at 1, WrestleMania Night 1, and then we got on Sunday we got WrestleMania Night 2, on Easter. Would you believe that? So that's it for now on this episode. So until the next episode comes rolling around, Mr. Announcer, take us home. Rest in peace, Mr. Wink Martindale. That is all for today's episode of the show. This is Mr. Announcer speaking for Eric Lima Shenanigans of 1977. A Big Beefy E and do it for Bob Saget production, and in association with a Raving Bull for 3000 Telepictures and Distribution. Thank you for watching another episode of Eric Lima Shenanigans of 1977. See you later on the next episode of the show. Goodbye for now.